welcome to App Academy Live. This is Jose Formoso here with Eli Blair, the top coach, I think, here.
Top coach? Oh my gosh, am I really the top coach?
Definitely the career coach. What's your official title?
Talent Development Manager and Career Coach here.
Nice. And you've been here for a couple of years now?
A couple of years, yep.
Awesome. So we're going to go over everything that Eli does, what he has done over the last 2 years, and how he has helped develop the curriculum, the career curriculum at App Academy, and which means, helping people get jobs.
Yep.
They get skills here, programming, engineering skills for technology jobs, but they also need to get those actual jobs, and it doesn't just require talent in
It's everything.
It's everything,
It's
right?
everything.
So we're going to go over all of those things, including where the market is currently in the technology industry. It's something that Eli knows a lot about. So let's get started.
Absolutely.
So first, before we really get started, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to App Academy.
So I am a person who had my own business. I had my own marketing, graphic and web design business for about 15 years. In about 2007, I decided to become certified as a coach. My practice was predominantly business and executive coaching. And then I got recruited into App Academy. And since that time, I have done career coaching and leadership coaching, and it's what I really love to do.
Awesome. And how did you get to App Academy, which, you're talking about coaching, but maybe some people believe that there's a big difference between general coaching for careers and coaching for technology careers.
There is a difference.
Yeah.
There really is. And when I came to App Academy, I had done a lot of business coaching.
Yeah.
And I had done some career coaching, but not at this level. So not only is App Academy an institution to learn, I have learned a great deal about this. And believe me, it is fast-paced, and I have learned a lot really quickly at this organization.
Cool. So then let's get into, you begin at App Academy.
Yep.
What does it look like, and what does a career curriculum look like for somebody that's learning about technology, coding skills, and then getting into the tech industry, which everybody around the world wants to get to, really. I mean, I've lived in the Bay Area for a long time. Literally thousands of people go to Mountain View, go to Silicon Valley, San Jose, San Francisco to get a job. And here there is a promise that if you go through our curriculum, we teach you these skills, and we will also help you get a job at some of these big companies. What does that look like?
So let's start off with the basics, that the career search is in weeks 10 through 12. Also, it's a little bit later on in our online program. So what does that really look like? So you're going to start off, during that time, you're going to learn all the technology on the other stuff, Ruby, Rails, React, JavaScript. You're going to get that on the back end and the educational side. When you come over to the career search side, then we're going to start hitting into the nitty-gritty. A really good resume. Now, if you come in and you've had experience, great. If you have a CS degree, awesome. If not, not a problem. We have people who come here who have been servers, who have worked as mechanical engineers, all sorts of industries come in and they get work. So we're going to be looking at a resume. How can we really sharpen that? We talk about cover letters. What's really interesting, are cover letters really necessary in 2019? The answer is yes and no. So we talk a little bit about that. What we find even more important is how to do approaches for applying. So methodologies that will really help people get into people's email boxes more than going into a generic, tracking system. We work on that. That's just the applying. Then we work with students on how to do networking. It's not only about doing meetups, but it's also about how are you reaching out to people on LinkedIn? How do you reach out to people in your social networks and doing all of that? That's the networking side. And then we talk about the interview side. How can we help sharpen our people, both technically and non-technically, for interviews? So that might be about pairboarding. It might be about practicing. It might be talking a lot about algorithms and data structures and trivia. We might talk about how your interview skills are. How are you presenting? Are you a person who's looking like this and talking like this in an interview?
That's how I do it all the time. I just come in, I'm like,
Yeah, and so when you realize this, that we have natural tendencies when we're interviewing, especially on phone screens, especially at on-sites.
yeah.
And so we really sort of teach you what are some really best practices to help you throughout the interview process.
Really interesting. Tell me about the difference. The first thing I thought about when you said that was there's a lot of people, you're kind of gaining confidence in your own skills technically. What does it look like when you really have to develop or maybe relearn some of the career skills that you have to do? Like, do you have an example of maybe a student that had a really difficult time with that? And if so, how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people have to remember this isn't a regular time. Right.
What do you mean by that?
So it's not like we're having a regular conversation.
Yeah.
When you think about it, if you're being interviewed by somebody and they're doing phone screens all the time,
Yeah.
if you're number 9 in their queue to do phone screens and you're talking like this, and if you're telling a little bit about yourself and your technical skills, it gets really boring. How do we teach people how to stand out during those times? So people might have had many jobs in the past, and that's great, but nobody likes interviewing. I've never once heard anybody ever say, God, I really hope I can apply for more jobs and go through 10 more on-sites. That doesn't happen. But everyone has to relearn how to interview. And part of that is also one of the things we do. We record people here because what we know is as adults, we learn quicker when we see and hear ourselves on camera. You need to know how you're presenting. And so that's a really good skill set we teach too.
How hard is that for most of the students? I feel like we live in an age where that we're always used to selfies and videos and Instagram and everything. But I feel like when there is a critical eye that may lead to a development in your career, maybe it's not so easy still.
Here's what I like to say.
Yeah.
I came from radio and TV many, many years ago. I hate seeing myself on camera. I hate hearing myself on camera.
So you're loving this right now.
However, what I do know is we learn quicker when we see ourselves. We learn what we need to sharpen. What is our energy like? Do we have filler words? So a lot of times I'll work with students and every other word's and I know Ruby and Rails and JavaScript, and I was a computer science major. You don't know these things until you actually see yourself.
Wow.
So having that visual is really essential. And even on a phone screen.
Yeah.
Right? Even recording yourself prior to a phone screen, because how are you sounding on the phone? If you're too loud, no problem. They can turn down the volume or hold their phones out further.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're talking like this and you're number 10 that they've interviewed today and you're talking about your JavaScript skills or your Ruby skills, it just gets monotonous. So how do we make you stand out? And these are some of the tools we use to help sharpen people's skills.
Those are really interesting. A question that comes up to me from that answer is that you do have to apply a lot, right? It's one of the things that I know that you guys talk about. Consistent dozens almost of applications a week. And we're talking about energy and presentation and everything. What is your recommendation for people trying to get that job? And I guess it's something that can be applied to anybody getting a job anywhere, really, right? So how do you maintain like your own personal mentality and positivity?
I think you have to set your plan. It can't be like, I'm going to apply to 2 places a day and I'm going to study for like an hour, because that's not reality here. What they say is true. Looking for a job is a full-time job. You have to be doing this 40 hours a week, if not more. And it's a whole process. It's not just about applying. It is about networking. It is about studying. It is about practicing. It is about speaking. So it takes a lot.
Wow, interesting.
But there's a carrot at the end of the stick. Right. And the carrot, if you can keep that in mind, is that 6-figure job or that 5 amazing figure job wherever you live that will really get you doing something you really love.
So let's talk about, we have some questions here from other students and that we wanted to bring up. So tell me about, well, let's get into, I guess, like you mentioned, the nitty-gritty of finding a job as a developer. and that includes being part of the marketplace,
Yeah.
or understanding it, right? So today, 2019, what does it take to actually find a job, a technology job in Silicon Valley or in the technology industry in general?
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. We know more now than ever before there's a huge need for software engineers. I know one company right now that is literally hiring 50 to 100 engineers per month, and they're going to be adding 1,000 or so to their headcount.
Wow.
So the numbers are just exponential nationally, globally. So they're even saying, like, if you want a job, there's just a huge need for engineers right now.
Yeah.
Data science, engineers, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at that, we know there's a huge need.
Yeah.
Now, the markets are different. If you're in San Francisco, it's a saturated market. There's a lot of people here. We have the top companies here in the Bay Area. So it is a saturated market. New York is a really big market as well. Each market is a little bit different. But I will say for the bigger cities and the bigger markets, there's a lot you have to do. So whereas once before, you could just send in a resume and there was such a need, they just would take anybody. That's not the case anymore. So
when did that change?
I would say that's changed, probably, believe it or not, it's been so quick in the last 5 or 6 years.
Really?
Yeah, it's not that long ago. And I'll give you a great example. When App Academy first started, both in New York and San Francisco, students were getting snapped up like that. Today, it's a harder market, and they're being asked to jump through more hoops.
Mm-hmm. So can you explain that the getting a job situation within the context of the promise that App Academy makes to its students when they pay? Because it's because most of them you're paying a little bit to get in, but most of the tuition is paid only when you get a job. So could you just explain the value proposition of the App Academy bootcamp?
Yeah, so we have several different tuition models here at App Academy.
Yeah.
We do have an upfront payment model, and then we have 2 different down payment and percentage models. So what does that really mean? That for most of you, if you're planning to come in on our hybrid or deferred model, that you'll pay a deposit to start, and that we'll take a percentage of your first year salary. So that could be a different percentage based on what model you're doing, whether it's online or in person. Mm-hmm. So we have those models. And here's why we're different. You know, most schools will say, hey, we'll take your money. You did a great job, off you go. Whether you're successful or not, it's really not as huge of an interest to them. We're different. And what I mean by that is, once they do pay a deposit, we don't get paid as a company until you get a job. And so our model really is, your success is our success. And we have I would say about a 97, 98% placement rate. So our people are finding jobs out there. But each one's different. Some people will find the job in the first few months. Some people take a little bit longer, can take up to a year. And the one benefit that we have here is we have a guarantee that if you don't find a job within a year, we'll pay your deposit back. That really doesn't happen.
It sounds like it's basically a guarantee that within a year
you'll get something.
Yeah.
And our people do.
Yeah. 97 to 98%.
We have a really big placement rate here, both for our in-person and our 10X Club, as well as our online.
Cool. So let's get to a couple other more questions.
Sure.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So you recently, well, actually, let's get into the partnership situation. You mentioned that you know a particular company that's applying to actually applied to get a partnership with us, and now we have a deal with them where they are looking for a lot of our students.
Yeah.
Right. So tell me more about the company partnerships with App Academy. What does that look like? And does it mean that if somebody comes to App Academy that they may be more likely to get a job from those particular companies?
Yeah. So we get requests in from companies who really like our students. So there are several top companies in the country right now who are working with, and basically they like our students. So we get a special link. They apply through our special link, and they're more...
A literal link.
A link.
Okay.
Now, sometimes, don't get me wrong, it could be an application.
Yeah.
We're also seeing a shift in the marketplace now.
Huh.
And what we're seeing is that some companies will give you a link to do a test, a coding test, before they even meet with you. They want to know they can code before they let you interview at a company. So we have several companies that would get those links, and that the potential employee is doing a HackerRank test or a coding challenge prior to meeting with them. But usually what I found is pretty much our students are pretty well equipped to take those tests.
Really interesting. So you are getting these connections, and they're like, and you personally, or the other career coaches, also have a direct relationship with the people at these companies, correct?
Yeah, so we're definitely creating relationships. And the other part is we have students and a lot of alumni. You know, as App Academy has grown, another trend that I've been seeing over the last year or so is our alumni are referring more and more people into their companies. And so one of the processes we tell our students is reach out to alumni, because don't forget, they get a referral fee just for referring people in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if they get hired, sure, most companies will do that.
Interesting.
So we do develop partnerships with our alumni and with other companies too.
Cool. And how many alumni does App Academy have at this point after 7 or 8 years in the business?
I would say we have thousands in our alumni network, but don't quote me on that.
Don't quote. Well, I did hear. I wanted to get it from you, but I mean, is that at least 2,500?
I would say that. At least 2,500 within our network, and just growing.
Yeah.
You know, if you think about that, each cohort in 2 cities is anywhere from 40 to 70 people.
Yeah.
We do about 5 of them a year in each city, plus online, plus our 10X network, so it's just growing.
And I did hear that that the boot camp is trying to develop more events to bring in particular groups of specific alumni from companies to kind of continue to develop that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We're trying to offer more programs. One of the things I know App Academy is committed to is we want to work with students not only from their first line of code, but throughout their professional development. How can we help them moving into their next job? What does that look like? How can we help them if they move into leadership roles? So I think we're definitely committed as we move into 2019 and 2020 to offer more programs for students and to work with our alumni. So it's not like we just let you go after your first job, that we offer a full range of services from now and moving forward.
That's really great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the negotiation. You recently wrote a post for the App Academy blog called, basically, I don't have the title here, but basically it's how you Eli, personally can help get students to make about $10,000 more per negotiation.
Yep.
Right?
Approximately.
Yep. It's a good round number. But based on the skills that you know and that you help them develop, literally through the negotiation process, they're making more money.
Absolutely.
Right? So can you talk about what you talked about in that blog?
Sure. I think the biggest misconception is people are fearful about negotiating. Until I came to App Academy, I never negotiated for anything. Then I learned here, like, really, all these years I could have been making more money? You know, I'm a man of a certain age. Learn that lesson now, that you should be negotiating on your salary. I think the first mistake is people are too scared. I think people are scared, oh, I'm going to negotiate, they're going to rescind the offer. That's not the case.
Especially if you haven't had a job for a while. Right?
Yeah, people are always fearful of that. That's not the case. And here's why. It costs employers a ton of money to get you in the door. It takes a lot of money to get someone to interview you, to review your code, to bring you into a group meeting, to do all these interviews and tests. And by the time they're going to give you an offer, it doesn't make sense for them to be stingy to pull the offer back. So I rarely hear of people getting their offers rescinded. But I will say there are savvy ways to negotiate. And I think that's what we do well here. We teach people the right ways to negotiate. We teach them never throw out the first number if you don't have to. If you do have to throw out the number, there's a way to do it diplomatically that opens the room for dialogue, for negotiation with you and the other company. So there are definite methodologies we teach on how to negotiate. And here's what I do know. Our students who negotiate typically get more money. Now, there are some people that will say, we hold firm at, 95, or we hold firm at 120. Great. But they don't get rescinded. Most times, more often than not, there is more money on the table to be had. You can get compensation, whether in salary, sign-on bonus, vacation time, RSUs, stock options, all sorts of different ways. But if you don't negotiate, if you don't ask, you'll never know.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was going through the blog post right now, and it's really interesting. People really should read it because the way that you're teaching people is to really maintain and understand that there is that money there, because
there's money,
right? So they understand the negotiation usually because they kind of go through a system, and then what you're saying is this is kind of what you need to say, such as I really like that you said based on what I am seeing online and in the marketplace. This is a quote from you. I will be looking for in the XXX range, but let's find something that will work for both of us. So part of it is tone. Too,
yeah,
right?
you want to open the dialogue. Because if I said to somebody, hey, look, Jose, I'm really going to be looking in the 120 range. Yeah. Now I just closed off. That might have been too much or too little. But if I said to you, hey, Jose, I'm looking to make in the 120 range, but for me, it really is about culture and fit. And I'm sure we can find something that'll be a win-win for everybody.
Interesting. So a lot of it is about word choice.
It is. You want to open up the dialogue, right? I want to find something that'll be a win-win for each of us.
Right.
Right. Let's talk more. Because if I just say 120, you might be out of the water. Or they might have said, yeah, we're going to pay 160. Now you just lost out.
You just lost, yeah.
Yeah. So if you say within this range, and let's talk more about it. I want to work with you and collaborate with you on the negotiation.
So it's a very subtle art that you're teaching.
Absolutely.
Because every single negotiation I believe you're saying, is different potentially. So you do need to pay attention to what they're saying and what you want to.
Yeah. Each one's different, but each one's the same. Like the one thing I do recommend is try not to throw out a number. And once they do throw out a number, don't say anything, and any response should be an email. Because here's what happens. If you start negotiating in person, people tend to get nervous. And then they forget things. Like I'll say to them, did you ask for a sign-on bonus? Oh, no, I forgot. Or they'll say, all right, we'll give you 125. Boom, done. And yet you forget to ask for the other things as well. So there's a lot of things that are open, but also I think there's a lot of things that can be done if you are prepared for that negotiation. And I think we do a great job here at App Academy of prepping our people for negotiation. And even if you're not going as a software developer, this is a life skill, right? No matter what job you're at, whether you're asking for a promotion or not, to get things in writing and to try to negotiate in writing and not in person if you can.
That's such a great advice. So if you want to read more about Eli's specific blog about how to get $10,000 more in compensation every time, go to blog.appacademy.io.
And by the way, in that blog post, we give you everything you need to write emails for negotiation. There's some really good hints in there, so definitely check it out.
Yeah, and you've written a couple of blog posts for us.
I have.
That. So look also for the Ask Eli blog post where Eli gets into specific questions that students have submitted, and you really get into them really interestingly. But we do have a couple more questions. Let's talk about some of the marketable skills that for engineers in particular that you're hearing about. What are the companies looking for?
It's a mix. We're seeing a lot of different things, and I think industry trend changes. Ruby on Rails, people argue that, people are still using it or they're using Python. I think everybody is a little bit different. We do a really good job on teaching Ruby on Rails, React, JavaScript. We definitely have those capabilities, and we're always adding in more. I know our new online program will have some new stuff that we're adding.
Yep.
So I think we really do a very good job of looking what's going on in the industry. We really do a good job of seeing what the needs are and sharpening our students up for that.
Mm-hmm. And you're always trying to understand if that changes, right?
Absolutely.
You're always in these conversations with these companies.
We're always trying to see what we can do or what we can do better. I mean, we've always learned things by talking to our recruiters. We did a survey last year of about 40 recruiters, and we're like, what do we need to know? What's going to help them in the application process? What do they need to have ready?
And how quickly did you take the answers from that survey and apply it to the
Immediately.
curriculum?
Immediately. A great example of that is resumes. We used to do a resume in a very different way, fancy, pretty resumes. Then we heard they weren't making through the tracking systems. So then we created a really pretty resume, and then we created a very ugly plain text resume. Great. But then when we talked to recruiters, what we heard was all they really need to be is parsable so that they're making it through the tracking system. So we sort of combined it with a text and a pretty resume, but there's some tips and tricks you need to know to get through tracking systems. And we took that immediately, right? And we have found a better result. We have learned about one online methodology for applying to companies that most people don't know about, and you'll have to come to App Academy to find out about it. But the realization is what we're finding is we get a better response rate using this direct email approach than if we were just applying on company websites.
Interesting. Cool. What would you say, this is I guess more of a general question about getting even into App Academy. What would you say to someone that was considering getting into the technology profession in the first place? Like, what are the questions they should be asking themselves, right? A lot of people are going to be watching this video that are maybe in a career, maybe they're already professionals for a few years or many years, that are post-grad school,
or post-career.
Yeah. I mean, here at App Academy, I have seen a lot of people that come from biology and English.
Everything.
Teaching,
we get everything.
Really. International students, etc. So those students ask themselves a question at some point.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like there's something about this tech industry that I'm interested in. Maybe it's the logic, puzzly nature of programming. Yeah. Maybe they're interested in the money, right?
I always, the first day of career search, I ask everybody, what made you want to become a software engineer? And I've learned to say, besides money, because that's always the top number one answer they say. But usually I hear people want to get into technology because they love the creativity aspect of it. Yeah. They love the challenge. You mentioned it earlier, the puzzle aspect of it and solving puzzles. Here's what I say. You got to want to sit behind a computer. You got to want to be able to solve problems, find bugs, fix them, and to be creative and create. That's really it.
But what about beyond that, beyond the very specific thing of wanting to be a technologist? What about like understanding your own way in the world and that you're going to make a change? I mean, you're thinking about, again, maybe a biologist, a geologist, a teacher. A lot of them have already gone through grad school. They've spent all this money and they've given most of their 20s, say, their lives really to this other profession. Then there's the change. What have you heard from students about that and like the mental preparation that it takes to say, let's go the other way?
So there's a couple things. A lot of times I hear from students, I was always interested in software development. Ever since I was a kid, I was fooling around working on a calculator project, or I worked on some other thing. So there was some sort of background. But that's not always the case. I think there's a couple motivating factors. One, I think it's the money. You can't beat it. It is true. It is a top-tier industry to be in. Engineers are making pretty good money across the country, across the globe. I also think people want to do good and help companies and have social impact. So I think that's a really good reason why people want to do things. And then a lot of times they want to move into something that's just different, that they're going to be able to have a marketable skill moving forward. Because let's be honest, as a software developer, once you get code and you can pick up things quickly, let's say you go to Africa for a year, typically you can work remotely, you can come back to any country or wherever and start getting involved in the industry again.
It's really interesting that you mentioned the good aspect of it, because I feel like the technology industry itself is going through, I wouldn't say a total mind change, but a reawakening or an awareness of the possibility of doing good in the world, even doing good within the company.
Yeah, there's an altruistic approach to this now. And I also have to say that, 10 years ago, most companies would only hire a CS degree person. That is not reality anymore. There are so many different methods that people are being educated into software engineering. I mean, a lot of people are learning already in high school. They're coming out of high school ready to go. Right. So, I mean, yes, we're a boot camp, and yes, there are amazing 4-year degrees, but there's also a lot of online classes too that are doing this. So companies are having to realize the traditional ways of which they recruited, we will only take a 4-year degree person. That doesn't hold true anymore. And,
They're saying that. Recruiters are saying that from the big companies.
They have to. They have to. There's a couple reasons they have to. One is because of the need, right? They need people who can code. And, it's interesting. Some companies are now doing it. They don't care where you came from. They just want to know and testing on skills. We don't care if you have a 4-year degree, a 1-year degree, a 1-month degree. Can you code? And they're testing on that. So it's not always about background. It's about skill set now, too.
That's amazing. Let's talk about, only have a couple of questions left. Has anything changed in the tech industry recruiting process over the last few years that you know of? And it's so
there's always something that's changing in the recruiting process. One that I don't really love that has just started, a lot of companies, well, not a lot, but it's picking up. Companies are doing phone screens that you have to videotape now. You don't talk to a live person. They're going to say, here's the question. You have 30 seconds to answer it, or 30 seconds to practice, and you have 2 minutes to answer. Record yourself. And so it takes out that person before.
Yeah.
And I can understand it from a human capital perspective, that they can just watch the videos and see who they want to bring in, but that's a new change.
Especially when you have the different personalities that you don't understand.
And you don't know who you're talking to or who's watching.
Wow.
Right? Because, if I talk to you, I could sort of get an idea of, what kind of person. Are you really energetic, or are you like, hi, tell me about yourself. What did you do? What kind of projects have you worked on? But when you're doing video, but there's a pro and a con to it too, because you can actually practice your video before and come off really energetic and talk to the camera, right? And so that gives you that ability too. Pro and con.
Really interesting. I mean, it's all developing. It's funny, like with the technology.
It's changing.
With the phone. To bring it back to another blog post that you wrote for App Academy previously was like you said, the learning how to record yourself as a potential way to learn about yourself and learn how to be a better interviewer, right?
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit in terms of like how you can really manage your own.
Well, I think again, I think it's really important that even myself, I don't know about you, but even myself, I don't know what I look and sound like half the time. And so to actually see that, and I'll give you a great example. We did a recording recently, maybe several months ago. And I had realized after I watched that video that I started to use a crazy word when I was presenting. And the word was right. Right? And I was saying it all the time. And I present lectures all the time, and I am doing public presentations, and I was using that all the time. And had I not seen that, I would have never caught that. And so, like, that also goes into the same idea of using filler words. So, and you start seeing those patterns, and those will show up on an interview. And if you're sitting there like this on an interview, or you're doing this all the time on an interview, you might not notice it, but I'll tell you as an interviewer, I notice when people are doing some crazy things or if they're using ums all the time, and I get people are nervous, and that's where the practice comes in.
Really interesting.
That's where the recording can help sharpen people.
So have you changed the right from your presentation? What about your personal life?
I have changed right, and I actually catch myself now in front of a room. If I'm like, right, I'm like, I said it again. So I definitely am now more cognizant about that.
It's funny because when you say that, I start thinking about there's an internal fear of like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Like after we're done with this interview, I'm gonna just start thinking about myself. What can I improve about myself with my own? This
is a life skill, yeah.
Right, and it's like there's a part of me that I'm like a little bit fearful of what I'm going to see. I'm not gonna do the right because I'm different. But I probably will do something else, and it'll be annoying. But if it's potentially beneficial,
we learn quicker.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
We really do learn quicker. I mean, I've done presentation skills, and as somebody as a facilitator, I was tested, and recorded. And it was really interesting to notice what I was doing with eye contact, what my volume was like, my energy level was like. And so to have that video, it's a game changer. And again, let me reiterate, nobody I know likes to see themselves or hear themselves on camera. Get over that. It's not about that. We're not putting it up on YouTube. It's here for us.
And it's not like I think maybe there's a sense of fear that you were like, oh, I'm not an Instagram model or whatever. I'm not selfieing all the time or something like that. It's totally different.
It is. It's educational.
It's educational.
Right. It's how can we sharpen and be better professionally and personally.
Well, final question. What's something that we haven't talked about that you think would be very beneficial for somebody that is potentially thinking about the technology industry as a career and thinking about the process of getting a job?
Yep.
So you think that we need to...
So here's what you need to know. If you're thinking about coming into technology, get ready. It takes a lot of work and you have to know a lot of things. So as I like to tell my students, the hardest thing in my mind's eye, and it's only my own perspective, is getting that first job. But be ready. You have to know a lot. You're going to have to be able to code in front of people. You're going to have to be able to demonstrate you know code. You're going to be able to have to talk and demo that code at some point. You're going to have to know algorithms, data structures, technology. So you have to know that. The first job is the hardest to get. After that, there is such a huge need. Recruiters are coming down, picking out people. The second and third job is much easier to get.
And a lot of people they do get maybe a year to 2 years of experience at first through these jobs, correct? And then they start moving because they get
recruited.
Yeah.
They're recruited or they want to move to another company. So
and that's where you get your negotiation skills.
That's where you get negotiations. But I think in today's world, people don't stay at jobs for 20, 30 years. What I am noticing is companies are doing a better job of trying to retain talent. And so I think that's important to know too. And they do this because I think they know now, and I think there's an ego thing amongst engineers where they say, look, you don't treat me right, I can find another job pretty quickly. I'll get another engineering job. But you have to prove yourself. You have to be a good coder. You could work as a software developer, but once they test you, and they will test you, I know people at 10 years, 20 years in the industry, everybody has to go through coding challenges, technical challenges for the most part. And so just know that you have to be good technically. That's now and in the future.
And I know that what a lot of the coaches here at App Academy talk about is that you kind of learn how to learn, right? You learn how to learn coding, how to learn...
How to prepare and how to continue, right. And I think the other thing that I think we teach really well here is maybe not so much in other educational organizations, but I think what we teach here is how to help people learn and pick up things quickly and pick up new languages and frameworks quickly. So if someone said to you, hey, I need you to pick up Java in the next few weeks or months, our people can pretty much do that and work on a team. If we said to somebody, we need you to be able to pick up Angular or Node.js quickly, our people can do that. And I think that's an essential skill as people go through the job market, right? Because you might work at a company and you might do something more different technologically on the front end or the back end, but can you, as I like to say, hit the ground running in a new team or any team for that matter? And I might also say this. Here's what's important to know. Companies are looking for people who can come in and, again, my favorite line, hit the ground running. By the time they're interviewing you, what you need to know is this. Somebody has left their team and there's a ton of work that needs to be done. Or they have so much work that they're adding on to their team. So the realization is they want somebody, who will fit into the team, and that's going to be a great culture fit. That's important. But they need someone who can come in and pretty much code and not need a lot of hand-holding. Yes, every company will train you, and there'll be a 90-day or 6-month ramp-up to get set up into the company. That's a given. But the perception is when you're interviewing, We want them to know, like, I can come in and integrate with your team quickly and effectively.
And what I've read is that includes that even though App Academy teaches a certain number of languages here, programming languages, there are a lot of students that, according to the records that I've read, that start their first job working on a programming language that they didn't really touch at App Academy, but because they learned the basics and how to learn, that it was quite an easy transition and, interestingly, not as hard as they really thought it might be.
Yeah, and a great case in point on that is we work with a national organization. They're huge. They're global, actually. And they have about, I would say right now, about 20 or 30 of our people there. But they work on their own proprietary software. And so it's not like a Ruby, Rails, or JavaScript. It's something that they've created.
Interesting.
So our students have been able to go in, and that's why they like us, is because they can pick up quick.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One company that I know does that is Facebook. That Facebook created their own language.
Parts of divisions, maybe.
Yeah. And I know that several of the App Academy graduates have gone into that company, so that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
It kind of shows a lot.
And we have people at Google, Apple, Facebook. You know, I would say that the top tier companies are a great goal, but I also think for first timers looking for startups or mid-sized companies are a great way to start too.
And,
getting the experience. Because 1 year, for 1 year or 2 years down the road, then you can go to the Googles and the Apples and the Facebook, get your credentials, get your chops wet, and get them all set up into coding and working on teams. And then when you're ready, but again, we have people at everywhere, at every level.
And some of the mid to major or maybe even startup companies do, by the way of the process of the technology industry, end up at those companies.
Absolutely.
That, right? So either through acquisition.
Absolutely.
Or,
I had one guy I spoke to this week, and he had worked at one company, and I think it was Autodesk just took him over. So now he's part of a bigger organization and all that. There was another company that just got taken over by Microsoft, so now those people are at a different company. So there's that aspect as well.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Eli, for this time. Let's do it again. And if anybody has any questions for Eli or for App Academy Live, we're going to continue to do these videos over the next couple of months, at least. So please send us any questions about anything about the process of learning here, about career search, or really anything else that you might have. Send them to us through the blog. Send them to Eli. We'll give out his personal phone number later. No, not really.
Email.
We're talking about email, right?
Email.
But thank you so much for watching, and we look forward